Welcome, everybody. A webinar today about smart ads and engaged fans. Future of live sports streaming. What a title. So I'm Michel. I'm now Dolby X THEO, so responsible for part of the engineering team. The guys that build all of our cool new products, the product development of all of that, the support of that. So always busy with technical stuff. And then let me introduce my my co-host, Lemu.
Good morning, everyone. Lemu Coker. I am a CTV ecosystems partnerships manager here at Google. That's a handful of words. Effectively, I work on the media and entertainment distribution side, working on behalf of the publishers. And my primary role here is to ensure that our large publishing partners, ad manager relationships work well with the variety of third-party ecosystem partners. So whether that be stitchers, video players, additional ad servers, that ad manager can work seamlessly across that entire ecosystem, and that monetization flows seamlessly. And I think we're here today to talk about the things that we've seen in live sports streaming, and how we see it from the Google side, how THEO sees it from Dolby sees it from their side, and what are the trends we're seeing, and what are things we should be concerned about, and things that we should be paying attention to, as it's an ever-evolving ecosystem in space, and there's just a lot of hot things going on right now that we would love to talk through. So this should be an exciting conversation.
It will definitely be an exciting conversation. An industry that's always changing, always adapting, so it's always something new to talk about. Let me first see if I can hit the right button and have a next slide. Look at that. So some practical things. So how this webinar tool works, it's not that hard. We love emoji, so you can react. So we really love emoji. So look at that. Here we go. And we'll have a poll coming up somewhere. So we're also asking something from you guys to do. So be prepared. And yeah, we're actually, like Lemu says, we're going to have some chit chats, talk about ads, what we see, what challenges we see, evolutions we see. But we welcome also your feedback and your thoughts. So the chat is open for questions. There we go. The agenda today. I think it's mostly going to be a conversation, and I think we're going to be challenged by sticking to the time schedule, knowing us too. We're going to talk about the trends we're seeing, about the interesting balance between how do you monetize, but also keep that viewer engagement. What Google, us, Dolby X THEO have been cooking. And then hopefully we can also share some key takeaways if we don't keep on talking until past the hour. And then also some Q&A. Hopefully we can get all of that done in the coming hour. So that's the topics we'll cover. What's next, Lemo?
Yeah, I think, just to kick it off and to get some user engagement here, we just like to take 30 seconds to for anyone in the viewer group to jump in and add your thoughts on what are the trends you're seeing in the live streaming space that are interesting to you, that you care about now, that things that you think are the most relevant for people in the space. I think, and don't just look at it from people in the ad tech space POV, but from a user POV. Like, what's your thoughts here? And we'll take a look here for the feedback. So we'll give it 30 seconds.
30-ish seconds
for people voting. Better ad experiences is leading right now. That, of course, ads matters. Streaming quality, of course, matters. I think everyone cares about streaming quality, as we've seen in a couple of live events recently. That matters. Can't get to the ads when you can't watch the stream.
And fan engagement also, number 2.
Yeah.
I think it shows the options pretty well, because it's very tied together.
Yeah. Good like.
For me, not per se a surprise, but things like better streaming quality. I wonder how people look at at that these days.
Thank you, John. The point in the chat. Yeah, diagnosing any issues in real time is clearly important. Okay, thank you guys. This has been super helpful. I think we're looking better ad experience is the top. The top choice with next level ad fan engagement is the second, and pushing lower latency third, and better streaming quality is fourth. Okay, we'll take that under advisement and move on forward, and we'll address those things during this chat.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks for all of the input. I think the next part is we're gonna look a bit at what the trends we've been seeing in all of the engagements that we've been working on, talking to people in the industry, certainly around live sports. What are people looking for? What are the challenges today? Like things like how do we diagnose, how do we operate, but also looking one step further. What is the next step that we're all looking for? My personal opinion, there are 3 listed here. The high viewer expectations. I think we've seen that a couple of weekends ago, right? It's a bit like, I would say it's the commodity. Everybody expects it. Everybody expects that on every device, on every screen, the experience is smooth. We used to have some tolerance, I think, for ads, but I think that went away.
I mean, look, all right, I'll speak from an ad tech POV and from like a user POV. You know, of course, as an ad tech, we understand that there's different tools and technologies that bring content to our television, right? Broadcast, cable, streaming, satellite, a lot of different ways of doing it. But at the end of the day, and I think everyone at their home has one big TV, right? The big screen. In my house is a 65-inch 4K TV. If there's any content that touches that TV, it needs to be seamless. It needs to just work in ways that if I'm watching content on my laptop or my cell phone, if there's buffering, I expect it. That happens every once in a while. But I don't think that, for people who have that big TV in their home, there's any expectation that there should be less than perfect. I think that's just kind of the reality that, we've grown up expecting when something you're watching on the big TV in your home, that it's going to be, seamless, perfect, no buffering in real time. Yes, streaming is a new area that, we have to have some wiggle room for, but my mother knows nothing about streaming. She just wants, her news and cooking shows to work correctly when she's trying to listen to wire. And never mind live sports and, pay-per-view matches. Like that needs to be streamed perfectly. And I think the new CTVs generally, yes, there are connected devices, and yes, there should be some room for buffering, but I think the user expectation is that it's going to be real time and perfect as if it were broadcast television in the 90s. I think that's the big difference between general streaming and general streaming on smaller devices and what's happening on the big screen TVs that are now all smart TVs. So the expectations are extremely high when you're viewing something on a big TV as opposed to streaming on a smaller device.
And to be honest, also what we saw back in the poll a few slides again, like it's not a trend, it's just an expectation that quality is there, and I can perfectly relate to it. Over the weekend, I had my Christmas present, buying a 65-inch TV with an Ambilight.
Yeah.
Then being surprised that I couldn't get it into the car because it was too big. But once it's installed, you don't expect that spinner. You don't want that. It needs to be perfect. The second one that I see more and more, and I think we've been talking about it for a long time in the industry, but I find it exciting that I feel it's really happening right now. The fear of missing out. And then you typically have the latency thing is one thing to it. You don't want to have your neighbor shouting before you. That's the typical example. Mm-hmm. But what you also more and more see is you're so much in the action in those final games, and you also don't want to miss out on the other game or on your favorite player, which is somewhere else. And then sometimes I see people or friends that are then actually watching on that big screen, then even on a second TV, but also even on their phone.
Yeah, this is I think it's just general fan engagement. Like as an example, I watch a lot of live sports, watch a lot of college football this weekend, for example, a lot of college football, go blue. I was, as I'm watching my football game, I'm not only watching the game, I'm also on Twitter seeing what trends and what's happening there. I'm also on 2 or 3 different text message threads, group needs with other friends talking about the game. And this is where I think, you know, there's an opportunity for engagement on larger CTVs, where they're in a way that there haven't been before. And I think this is where kind of some of the promise of AI, right? Um, I look at I personally look at AI as this kind of performance enhancing drug. It's a way to, you know, optimize operations on the back end, but for a user, I'm more so interested like what additional information can be brought to me. If you watch a lot of sports matches, they're always like, hey, in the fourth quarter, this left-footed kicker's mom went to this school and ate ice cream in 1975, and just random information. And a lot of it's not that relevant. And I think there's organizations bringing in live content, live like streaming stats, like Sports Radar, for example, does a great job of giving you what's happening in the game. But there's also a cultural piece of this, like, that's less Sports Radar, but more Wikipedia. Like, how can you use AI to bring those two things together to give me interesting, relevant information about what's happening in this game, but also what's happening in the zeitgeist? I'd love to see, high level tweets or, comments about what's happening in the game, but also a visual way I could bring in the conversation with my friends I'm having on the different devices while I watch a game. That could be fascinating, right? Because like I said, I'm having conversations with my friends while looking at conversations on the internet while watching the game. Like, why can't that happen in one area, on one device, ideally a CTV? And I think AI is one of the tools that can possibly do that for us. So we've been here at Google, we're exploring different ways of pulling in different information rather than the standard, sports stats, sportscast. If you think back to the 90s, this show Pop Up Video, where you're watching a music video and interesting, facts about Pat Benatar and Duran Duran will pop up during the video. Why can't we do that for sports and for general content, period? I think leveraging AI to be able to pull in the Sports Radar and the Wikipedia and find that interesting middle ground of cultural relevant information, even if it's, shopping information, where to get the headbands that Rob was wearing, that could be pulled into the data. So that's one thing that we're exploring in the live streaming space. Like, how do you pull in the relevant real-time information?
Yeah, and then exploring how you can create that experience. Like, how can you create it in a way that you really pull that viewer into the action? For I can completely relate to what you're saying. Like, there is a goal being scored, but who, for example, I'm more a soccer fan. Like, who scored that first Panenka in that same way than Messi is scoring it at that point in time? Just to give a stupid example, but for me that would be super relevant and super engaging. Or for example, in the final games of the competition, okay, there's a goal being scored in the other game that's being brought to you instead of that you need to keep watching and get that push message.
Yeah, look, we've got World Cup coming up in 2-3 years, right? And how do you in the first qualifying round, the knockout rounds, how do you keep track of both games? Yes, you can do multi-stream, but I like to get information in the game, given especially in a soccer match where you don't necessarily have ad interruptions. Like, how do you non-intrusively add in relevant information to the stream so that users can be as up to date, but converse in new ways that are something that we're thinking about how to properly introduce that information now.
And then I really wonder what you think of the next one. I don't know if the GIFs are working on our slides. Maybe I need to focus it. Yes, the GIF. Here is the pixel. Look, what I always find weird, but probably you have another view on it, is what we historically being used to is you pull people into the action. You're then finally happy that people are watching your stream, and then you set them off with that. Take away that experience and show an ad full screen. Really, yeah, disrupting that viewership. I find it, the more that we be working on the technology, the more I find that weird that we're still accepting that. But probably you look at that very differently than I do.
I mean, look, you're from Belgium. You are a soccer fan where they're just 45-minute halves.
True.
In football and basketball, we have media timeouts where there's built-in timeout breaks for ads to run. So my perspective is that there are large portions of the audience, especially in America. I can't speak for every region, but in America that understand and expect ads on some level. And I think, we have to get creative around how we're doing that. If we're watching sports and there's built-in ads, okay, you expect ads in the same way that there's a lot of people who watch the NFL Super Bowl just for the ads, right? A built-in, yeah. I mean, they're the best of the best ads really of the year, and they're always talked about. Good, bad, and ugly, they're always talked about. But that's in a large sporting capacity. But let's say if you're binge watching something on one of the new streaming services, Netflix, for example, I think there's opportunities to get creative around how you do ad loads. If someone's willing to watch a 2 to 3 minute ad to then binge 4 or 5 episodes of a show without ads, that should be an option that's given to them because they might take that option. There might be new ways, shorter, 6-second ads inserted in certain places, longer ads in certain other ones. I think a lot of this is, again, leveraging, AI to understand user behavior and do a lot of testing to figure out where is their ad tolerance, and where is there not as much tolerance in that they want to just get their content, see what's going on. So a lot of testing is needed, a lot of, UX research to really understand that some places might be better for binging ads, for longer ads so that they can binge. Other places, 6-second ads might be other, might be appropriate, but just the standard 15 and 30-second ads, I think we just need to get creative around, what is acceptable to users nowadays and leverage tools like AI to better understand the behavior so that we can make the process as seamless as possible. I think that's the goal for the end user.
And how do advertisers look at that? Because I can imagine that just like for the viewer, creating a more contextual, relevant ad to you, also for the advertiser, that's a selling point or a reason to probably provide more CPM to that, or how does that work?
Exactly. I mean, I think there's, advertisers want to make sure that their brands are remembered. So brand recall is a big tool in the marketing side to say like how effective was your ad. Like, do people recall it, days later, minutes after, and interesting new ways that are being leveraged right now by companies like us. There are companies like Whirl, Samba, Iris are doing contextual metadata targeting that are tackling sentiment. So as one example, one use case, if you have a news segment that is about, puppy dogs and ice cream, you want like a nice, Charmin toilet paper, something nice and
Why are you talking about it's an ice cream league?
puppy dogs and ice cream. One like something nice and friendly and nice, user segment. You want something a lighter ad to come after that. But if you come out of let's say a heavily contested, controversial political segment, you do not want your brand against that. So having contextual metadata helps you helps some publishers or advertisers understand what's the content that came right before the ad break and target away from that for brand safety reasons, or potentially target it for no, this is a relevant ad for the content that came right before it. So it's one way that a lot of publishers and data providers are now exploring that contextual metadata and specifically around sentiment.
I was just about to ask, because we're talking about trends in live streaming, how much are we already in that? And is the technology ready for that? Because I certainly see links to what we've been building to enable all of that, but how far is that advanced in your view today?
I think it exists out there right now. I mean, we've got there's been like ACR data for some time now where people understand kind of what's happening on the screen, and be able to target some areas. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of new technology that's really getting to like frame accurate understanding what the content is, and then allowing the ad breaks to be targetable depending on what some of the categories or the data that's coming out of that content piece. That first or second or third ad break is not targetable.
Yeah.
I think historically people have used IB categories as one way to target, but I think there's a lot more color that can be added to IB taxonomies. They aren't as in depth as a lot of publishers want. So that's what a lot of these data providers are doing, and that we're exploring partnerships with them to better understand how can we add more color to targeting capabilities based on metadata coming from the content.
Yeah.
So that it can again add more color, so targets advertisers can either for a brand safety reason target away or target to it.
But contextual to the content, but if you can even imagine to the user behavior, the viewer, his characteristics, and then you come back to the culture point, then you're creating something very, very strong.
Exactly. And like I said, the end goal for the advertisers is for the users to understand that brand and to have brand recall and ideally buy whatever the product they're selling. So however you can make that emotional tie from the ad to the content stronger, you want to explore it. I mean, it's a tricky space because you don't want to tie your brand to like an emotional, a bad emotional moment.
Yeah, of course.
Not bad. That works in the opposite direction. But where possible, that's the goal, and we're trying to find the tools to help facilitate that type of connection for publishers, content publishers, and advertisers.
Yeah. Think maybe because we need to look a bit at time because we can keep on talking forever. Maybe also a question we need to, or something we need to talk about is, yeah, if you're providing live sports or a live sports training, what are your ways to differentiate? Basically, how can you differentiate between anybody else that is offering the same stream? Because I saw some things in the chat coming by. I don't know how you look at it, but for me, if you think about it, that same live sports stream, that same content, that same game, the game is not going to change, and you have different providers offering that. So how can you make sure that people come to your service, which is then potentially a subscription based or potentially a free service? So I think that's probably also a question that I would think that a lot of providers are looking at. It's the same content, it's the same sport, it's the same game. And why would people go to service A or why would people go to service B, right? And then if you look at the monetization models, I think, yeah, what are we seeing today? How people monetize their service? Then you have, of course, the subscription model, like ads free experience, so no ads. Although I think we had an interesting discussion during the dry run of this webinar. Like, does that even exist?
Yeah, that's interesting, especially for U.S. sports where there are ad breaks built in, whether it be the NFL or NBA as two examples. You've got media timeouts. Like I think I'm sure some folks in the chat will chime in there, but that's a great question of like how you can have an ad free experience for a live streaming game that has ad space built into it. Something to think through.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have, of course, the free models which are supported by ads. So basically, where there is no subscription fee, but you basically get the money through the ads, or the hybrid approach. But actually, I think we were thinking about the subscription model, pure subscription in sports. Actually, that doesn't exist. Even if you indeed Anfield, very nice picture, but even there are billboards next to the stadium. So there's always ads in there.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been, television has been an ads-based economy since the days of operas that sold soap during the commercial breaks, and hence soap operas. So, it's interesting. I mean, I think we're thinking the extreme of like, is there a way to completely remove ads from content? The short answer is no. I mean, I think one, to my earlier point about users having a tolerance for ads is just part of the experience that those of us who are of a certain age kind of know. But my 3-year-old son has played with YouTube Premium and with no ads, and he's like, you try to get him on regular YouTube, he's like, what's going on here? What?
Absolutely.
So I think the younger kids, the Gen Alphas, as they say, might have less of a tolerance because they've seen what that looks like. But for the most of us of a certain age, we know ads are built in. Ads have built the internet, frankly. In Google has been a part of helping.
You're guilty to that.
I mean, we're one of many. Like I'd like to take a lot of credit for Google, but one of many that helped build the current internet on ads. So it's something that I don't think we should try to remove. But how do we create that better experience with ads? Is the real.
How do we create those relevant ads? Because I indeed agree, like the diminishing experience, like you change from full screen content to the ads, maybe that indeed that tolerance is there if it's a relevant ad. And then probably the advertiser is willing to, if I understood it correctly, pay more for that. And also the viewer is willing to accept it.
Yeah,
as-
I think there's also, I think to the challenges that we're mentioning here, seamless ad insertion. If you remember the early days of some fast channels, like you'd be watching an old episode of X Files, and an ad would randomly pop up in the middle of the episode. You're like, what the hell's going on here? Because they didn't have necessarily markers to say an ad should go here, and even for content, let's say the Netflix content, HBO content, that there's no ad, traditionally no ads built in. But where do you insert an ad when it's being played on an ad supporting model? So we've gotten better around, let's say, study markers and understanding where the natural break for an ad can possibly be. But
Mhm.
that was a big issue for a while, and I hated watching some early fast shows because of that ad interruption. But I'll let you go through the challenges that are we're laying out here, but just my first experience with some early fast channels.
Early fast channels, that comes to the relevance. I think the seamless ad insertion, because I saw it also in the chat, actually, that 65-inch TV is typically less powerful than your laptop, and still the viewer expectation is higher than on that laptop. So the seamless aspect to it. And to be honest, also the trend in latency, you do see the live sports also starting to look at latency. So on top of all of the challenges we're talking about, also right now that doing that at a lower latency is coming more on top of that. And it starts to wonder, like, how can you then differentiate? Because I'm offering my live sports, I'm offering my live football game, but it's also available on broadcast, on cable TV, and I have my subscription service. So how can I differentiate? Like, the quality needs to be there. I think we've seen that. We know that. You can differentiate between bringing people closer to the action. That's something that might bring people there. I believe the experience get more fan engagement out. So that's the relevance, I think, part, the experience part. And then probably also the new ad experiences, like instead of just doing the regular replace, maybe look at a double box, an L shape.
Yeah,
It feels like that's the playground where you're at as a streaming provider, right?
yeah, and I think just trying to find what's the right playground for your service. Ultra low latency. I think we've had an initial conversation around like why that works for betting, because you don't want there to if you're streaming and it's 30 seconds behind broadcast. If you are betting, that's an opportunity for arbitrage for someone who say, hey, I know what's going to happen. Let me bet quickly. And I know betting is one of the use cases for ultra low latency. And I haven't done that much research there, and that's kind of new to me. But I'm interested to see how that use case drives some additional innovation in the space. But again, I think as you were mentioning earlier, the innovative user experiences is what I'm personally interested in, and also professionally interested in. Like, how do we create better user experiences for our people? Whether that be new ad experiences that are more personalized, because the double box has been around on broadcast for some time, but that was a guy in a production booth who hit
Yes,
the button.
correct. Indeed.
How do we make that now programmatic, in a way that's scalable and personable for the 2 million concurrent viewers on a certain show is a technical challenge, but it's one that I think we're all working towards, to make sure that these are scalable but also personalized.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Which has been honestly to what we've been working on, for me, pretty exciting. Like, how do you balance monetization and viewer engagement? Like, but of course, doing this webinar because we've been working around this technology with server-guided ad insertion, and we were able to create these new ad experience, like the double box side by side companion in the background, an L shape, which is then contextual to the action that is going on. And I agree, like, you can do this in the production booth, but how do you make this contextual to the person that is consuming that video, contextual to the game that is happening? So for me, this has been pretty exciting, seeing this come to life and seeing what you're able to do with it. So for me, this opens up a wealth of new possibilities in that next level experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll occasionally see one or two of these pop up every once in a while on the service, and it's interesting to
Correct.
see kind of how this works. I think retail retail media has been like the one of the drivers of some of this. These, let's say, the L formats where you've got QR codes and direct response, because we no longer have those 900 numbers that used to pop up on the TV back. Well, there's a better way. But yeah, it's great to see, this type of innovation. And I think, to my earlier point, it's how do you scale it, personalize it, but then also, this can be done on the publisher side. We can serve ads,
Correct.
to these people, but I think on the buy side, getting more education on the buy side about how to buy these, how to target these types of ads is something that we're working through now, because we want there to be a lot of inventory for these types of ads, and you need to educate the buy side on how to, one, build your creative for these formats, and then two, how to buy and sell that. I think that's one part, that bridge that is partially missing from this going much wider.
And also the metadata that you need to put in there, because it sounds trivial, like putting that double box, but at what positions is that, and how do you bring that companion in the back, and then how does that QR code work? Like, what do you want that QR code to do in this case? So for me, it feels very logical and natural doing these things, but you do see it's pretty innovative doing this personalized and contextual for the viewer. But actually, it's if you start working on this, this is actually more than about advertisements. It's about a new experience, in my view. Like what we talked about earlier, like the FOMO, fear of missing out. This is, of course, not per se advertisement. It can also be driven by AI, or just even by a director, or based on your own preference. But imagine you have a fantasy football team and one of your players scores a goal in the other game. Imagine that that's basically brought into your experience by the same technology, or get an overlay, those stats, those Genius Sports stats that you put in there, contextual to what you're seeing. That's actually, it's beyond advertisement what we've been building, and actually feeds into what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I think it's I'm interested in the day when I can log into whatever service I'm watching and kind of customize the view. I think if you one example of what you see right now on YouTube TV is there's kind of you can watch multi screens and kind of pick the game that you want to watch, and it works well. It's fantastic. And multi view has been around for some time now. Like, how do you go? What's beyond that? I think it's a multi view with stats data added into your screen, your viewing uh view. It's that kind of like pop-up video, Wikipedia, contextual, cultural information added to the viewing, the content that I think can be interesting. So it's like, how do you go on and really customize my TV experience, whether it be multiple games, information, stats? I'm interested in who's leveraging AI to build cool things in ways that keep me focused on the television instead of me having to go to a secondary device to get more information. Like, I can do this on the large screen.
What I'm always wondering in this, I probably am a bit giving away how I look TV, but honestly, it's really now with the big 65-inch TV, if I drop into the couch, I want to have it brought to me. I don't want to go to a menu and start configuring. Oh, I want to see this there and that. I don't have. I want it needs to come to me, right?
It does beg the question of, like, is the large, CTVs, let's say 55 plus, is that meant to be just a lean back experience? Like, how interactive is that meant to be? And are we forcing interactivity in a place where there shouldn't be interactivity, right? And I think that's what iPads have been great as a tool to view content, because you can have these interactive things. So it's an iPad, or it's meant to be touched. But I think, part of one of the things I do hear often, it's just POCs, that we just do so much testing, because it's instant to know, like, all right, what are the nuances here that we're missing, that we're overlooking, that, that we are completely wrong about. You just have to have a hypothesis around, is this type of experience something that is scalable and that a lot of people want, or is this just, my whimsical views on, like, what I want my screen to look like?
Because I do believe that once I'm in the experience and then something calls my action and I'm able to then interact, I would probably do it, but I don't want to start creating the experience upfront for myself.
Yeah, no, that I hear you on that. I think it's And for me, it's content based. It depends on what I'm doing. Like for sports, I'm willing to be more interactive and like get more information. If I'm just watching my, everyday rom-com, if I'm watching Harry Met Sally again, I just want to lean back and not have anything interrupt that experience. So I think I think it's content specific, but if we're focusing on live sports here, I think there's room for interactivity in ways that there aren't necessarily for other content. But it's again, this is my hypothesis that we all need to test out.
I think a lot of this is indeed testing. I think that's also what we've seen when engaging with customers in what we build. Every engagement, there is new ideas. And before we start talking about rom-coms too much, I'm starting to get worried. So, but it's also a quite impressive list of logos. If you put it together, Dolby, THEO, actually one company right now, video audio quality. THEO, I think we're recognized for a premium video player. You guys, advertisement leader. You would think only good things can come out and pretty cool things can come out, which I presume we've also experienced in the last months, year, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, we've been, engaged and working together for about, over a year and a half, almost 2 years now. And the relationship's been fantastic. I think, you guys as a video player, like I said earlier, part of my role here was to make sure that our publishing partners can monetize efficiently with whatever other tools they use, whether it be a different video player, a different stitcher, CDNs, whatever it might be, making sure the plumbing between all these things are working correctly. So, working with you at the THEO team, and even before the acquisition and post acquisition has been great. Making sure that you guys are aligned to what we're trying to do when it comes to monetization for all of our video publishers who are looking to extend their reach and maximize revenue where they can without destroying the consumer experience, because they care about the content, but they also want to drive money with it, because the media space is a tough space right now, as a lot of us recognize and know.
Absolutely. A tough space to work in, but also still one with a lot of innovation and a lot of new boundaries to set and to push, which is pretty exciting.
Exactly. I think when we start thinking about, some of the sacred cows in our space, we just need to throw it out the window and just say, hey, what do we know? What do we think we know? And let's test to see if that's real or not. And how else can we explore new innovative ways to bring our users the content while helping the publishers monetize. So always thinking on both hands for the advertisers and the publishers, and trying to find the right bridge between the two. And thank you for going to the next slide, because
That's the very good segue. I heard you saying keywords that were on this slide, so I thought I was gonna hit the button.
look, I think at Google at a high level, we leverage our ads and Ad Manager specifically as a product to help our partners just drive revenue and drive their outcomes, whatever that might be. If it's just driving, looking for new user engagement, understanding more about the content that's running on your site, or understanding whether whether the right subscription model is working. We have the tools to help partners better understand what's going on in real time. I think Ad Manager there are a lot of great products out there, and Ad Manager is great because it's so robust. There aren't many use cases that we don't see, that we don't have tools for. And we have some of the largest media publishers out there using our systems, and not only handling legacy business, but exploring new innovative tools and ways of monetization. You can go next slide.
Yes, which has been, honestly, just to pitch into them, great in the engagement we had over the 1.5 year. It feels sometimes like the big Google, big companies, but actually it felt more like a small team working together. And okay, we have this, we can put it together, we just make it work. So really appreciated that collaboration and that way of working, actually.
Absolutely. And I think, part of our focus, at least in my role for the past 2-3 years, has been making sure that, our publishing partners, our technology partners understand that Ad Manager is a flexible tool that's interoperable regardless of the environment or the system that our publishers need. And that, whether you're leveraging us as a primary ad server, whether you have your own ad server and you're looking for an SSP to plug in to drive additional revenue, or you're looking for a stitcher, whether it be in the client side or the server side, we have the tools to service that model and provide innovative new things. Working with partners like THEO, working with other stitchers, working with other video players. Again, we are flexible and interoperable. And I think we all know that, the days of like the full stack partnership are just kind of long gone. And there's what we call Frankenstacks. Everyone had a piece of this, Frankenstacks, a piece of this, a piece of that here. I mean, one of the words that I throw around every once in a while. Who's your But I think we all understand what that is, right? It's everyone has a different piece of tooling that they need to use that could be proprietary or third party that, has to all work together. And I think there isn't enough of a story of people trying to be more interoperable, knowing that everyone has a unique stack. So that's something that we are highly focused on and making sure that, we can go to where our partners' needs are. Go to the next slide. And I just think going back to the live sports experience, we have a lot of experience in the live sports arena. I think for this year alone, over 125 marquee live events. And what that means is high visibility, high concurrency events, whether that be, NFL games, NCAA games, some Indian Premier League, UEFA Cup, world, different World Cups and Olympics games. I think, Indian Premier League, World Cup, as most people here know, are some of the largest streaming events out there. We handle those and work with our partners globally to make sure that runs correctly. And we're talking about in the tens of millions of streams here. This isn't 500,000, 2 million streams here, but in the tens of millions. And if one example is that, for this year alone, for one publisher, we've had over 13,000 live events. And I think,
13,000.
13,000. So yeah, multiple events a day over streaming for some large publishers that have a lot of sports content. So what suggests is that, like, we know what we're doing here. We have teams around the globe who can address issues in real time as they pop up, because we have a lot of experience here. So I'm particularly proud of some of the work that we're doing here. And I think one thing that doesn't get talked about as much in these new innovative spaces is also troubleshooting and the tools that can help troubleshoot, but also the teams that are there to troubleshoot in real time. Whether you are in Australia, London, Argentina, do you have the right partner that can help troubleshoot and stream any of these issues in real time? That's
To be honest,
we're proud of. Go ahead.
yeah, that's something, to be honest, that we feel a lot with customers that we work with. Like you can have the best products, which we all do, but it's also the service and the expertise that you bring on top of it. How you work with your customers, but also go beyond creating not that Franken stack, but creating that best experience and looking also to push the boundaries. Because actually, everything we present today and talk about today, that also started about a joint customer just telling, I have 10 issues, go and fix them and bring me a solution.
Yeah.
Which was quite memorable. I think, let's see, because what we brought up the word, so let's talk a little bit on what we've been building. So client-side ad insertion, server-side ad insertion, pretty much known to, I think, most people on the webinar. Where client-side, you do everything on the client side, controlled by the video player, but quite some, you can build all of that, but quite some maintenance. And certainly if you want to get that as a seamless experience, pretty challenging. Server side, where a lot of people move to, but when we talk about that contextual aspect, that personalized aspect, also the latency aspect, that then you are a bit, you're having to make compromises with server side approach. So the server basically stitching in the ads, making all of that ready, and basically the devices just being the playback of that stream. Right now, the new technology, I find it super exciting, server-guided ad insertion. So basically where you take the best of both worlds. So you put the pendulum back in the middle, where we bring back the ad splicing to the player side, which allows you to create experience like the double box, the L shape, with that contextual aspect, with that personalization aspect. But you still keep the singling server side. You still keep the control on the server side to where are my breaks, how should these breaks be handled, cut my break short, basically all of the editing of your breaks that you want to do, but also keep the conditioning of that break server side. And that's where it's been great working with you guys on Google DAI to make sure that the player just, when he reaches out, hey, I have an ad break just in time, I want my ad to be filled, to get back a fully playable manifest, which you then basically can just play out as the break, making it very easy on all the different devices, get that cross-platform going, but also makes it super scalable. You no longer have that server component for all of your viewers that needs to scale, but you actually are using the power of all of your different devices. So you put basically scalability comes out of the box. All of your signaling is non-personalized, and it's the player that creates that personalization layer on top of it. It's been great building it, to be honest. How does that look like? And look at those pink colors. I'm always a bit allergic to pink, but whatever. So via workflow, VOD workflow, you get a signaling service in the middle that basically handles putting those beacons, those trackers, how to handle that break into the manifest, but all of that fully unpersonalized. So meaning your CDN can cache that, making it very scalable, also allowing you to basically mask the fact that it is ads. So you could, for example, perfectly make sure that for the video player or for ad blockers, it doesn't show as an ad in the manifest, so making it much harder for ad blockers to act again on it. The video player basically orchestrating all of that, so orchestrating the experience of how am I going to present this break, but also orchestrating at what latency I'm going to do it, because that's super exciting. If you combine a double box at sub-second latency at scale, which we've shown to one of our joint customers, which was very cool. And the ad server actually just returning a fully playable ad break for the device the video player is running on. So that, and a bit in a nutshell, what we've been building, but has been pretty exciting in creating all of the things that we've also been talking about and tackling all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean for live sports streaming? Feel free to pitch in, Lemu, but if we look at what advantages that gives, what we brought, like the more viewer engagement through different ad formats, more contextual ads, creates both for the advertising side, if I understood you correctly, and the viewer side, makes it more relevant what you're looking at.
Look, I think, from the tests that we're doing and the partners that we're working on with it, it helps us do what we do best, which is deliver contextual ads. To help you do what you do best is make sure that viewer experience is optimal. So, by delivering this, just pot of ads directly to the video player, we're using our tools as efficiently as possible to get to you, so that you can, create these new personalized experience, whether it be multi-view with ads, the additional information and data that can be serviced. Because with SGAI, it's not just a matter of serving ads, you can just serve information. I think that's where we can get creative around, like, what are we serving into these new viewports. And, again, having, low latency, operational efficiency, and new innovative ad formats is what we're all looking at. Now it's just a matter of testing it and working with some of our largest partners to say, all right, what's the best what's the best ad format that we get good feedback on, where we're getting good user experience with, while maximizing ad loads and revenue is the holy grail.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the fact actually that one of the first things that also came into the chat about debuggability, operability, I think in all of it, technology that we've been using, and like you also just say, you guys do what you do best, we do what we do best, but that's also inherently to the server-guided ad insertion technology we use. You put the blocks at the right places, making it a much simpler workflow, but also much simpler to understand, to troubleshoot, to scale, and you can create all of this. So for me, it's every day new opportunities, and like you say, it's testing and getting feedback from customers. Like, what is the experience you want to create? Because right now it's actually 1 week of time. It's a few days of time to change it in a player, get a new format out there, and no longer a production thing that you need to do, which is the same thing for everybody. Awesome. think we're still good on tracking on time. And
Out of 10 minutes, we'll slide through this and we can get into the questions.
yes, absolutely. What are the 3 things we should remember today, Lemu?
I think laid out here, differentiation is key. Making sure that as we build new tools within our streaming services, we're finding out what are the innovative tools that we can make our service even more sticky, while driving a good user experience, while also maximizing revenue. I think that kind of triumvirate of information is what we're all trying to key on and make sure that we're doing it and doing it well.
Yes.
Focusing on fan engagement is another part of that triumvirate of like making sure that the information is that we're highlighting is relevant, so that one, it can become more sticky, and leveraging tools like SGAI to be able to insert not just ads but information in there that can provide a better experience is the end goal. And just embracing the SGAI, that you've laid it out really well around what some of the advantages are to this new tool. And there's interesting ways of getting to a lot of the formats that we've mentioned, but we just feel SGAI is the most robust and scalable. Leveraging, ad manager is the ad server, THEO is the player, is the tool that we built that we think is the best in the business.
Yeah, and I think it's really about embracing that innovation which is available there today. So to basically make you stand out. Why should a viewer watch for your subscription, pay for your subscription service to watch the game, which is also on broadcast TV somewhere else, for example? Like, differentiate between that, and that's, I think, where all of this technology can help you create a higher engagement with the fans, create something that is unique to the others, and driving that revenue. So we had a famous cooking show in Belgium always. They always ask, what are the 3 things you remember? So I like the slide, actually. Live sports streaming. Look at that.
Boom, boom. You want to jump into questions?
Let's jump into the questions. How does this work? How is the first one? How is tracking beaconing handled in the SGAI case? Client sends tracking beacons. What about ad blockers? I think we covered this question partly. So we pull. I also always wonder, it's maybe a side question, how much the advertisers care about the beacons coming actually from the client. That's very different for your revenue model, for your CPN, Lemu, if actually the beacons are coming from the client?
No, I mean, I think if anything, it's just a kind of internal tracking to make sure that things are getting viewed, whether it be quartile beacons, or make sure that the full ad is being viewed or not, or is it dropping off. But from, I think this is getting a little into the weeds beyond my expertise, but I don't think that's calculated into the CPM.
Yeah, okay. Because right now the client indeed sends the beacon, so it's the client who very accurately tracks the progress of the viewing session. And what about ad blockers? Well, that's basically through the signaling part, we are able to make sure that you can't differentiate between, is this now an ad or a content that is playing? So ensuring that also your ad blockers have a little of play there. Now, of course, to some extent, even on server-side solution, ad blockers can play, but then you're mostly completely killing the experience. So I wonder what you're then doing.
Yeah, this is a good question. If ad blockers are present, like, will that kill the stream so you won't even have content? I think that's something that we've thought through a little bit. But yeah.
I think that's also the later question. How does SGI deal with ad blockers? I think we track that. The recording will definitely be shared after the session. I also see what else questions do we see here?
What other ad servers can THEO connect to? Is there a max ad duration supported within Ad Manager? So yeah, there is a max ad duration support in there. I mean, you can set the amount of the ad load that you'd want to support for your specific publisher. That's easily configurable within the UI.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another question is, what with the double box? What about audio? I think throughout the entire narrative, you heard us talking about the flexibility this gives, and by putting it to the player, that makes it much more agile to make an adjustment. That's a long segue to say right now in the double box format, we keep the audio with the ad. I think that's also what advertisers would expect, that actually the audio is there. But if in a certain use case there is an ad format where you actually don't want that, that's a very easily thing to do. But I would guess Lemu advertisers typically want the audio of their ads to be playing. Right?
Absolutely. I think or is the question, could you have a double box where it's video and then the second box audio, just like an audio stream? I don't know if that's the specific question,
but also there, audio ads is also something that you can perfectly create with all of this, because since you're creating the experience client side, a lot is possible. Of course, you can't go completely overboard, but it opens up things that in the past were difficult to do right now actually become super simple to do, whether it be on, and that counts for any streaming protocol, whether it be at the higher latency of HLS and Dash, whether it be at the ultra low latencies through a THEO Live or a millicast, and on all of it, we basically are able to do this, which is pretty exciting. In SGAI, do the ads come from the same CDN as the content? Server-Guided Ad Insertion and signaling service does allow that. So you can, for example, put that through the same CDN. I think if we current with Google the AI, I think the ads are served from Google domain, the Google CDN. But I think that's flexible, right? Well,
yeah. What's happened to the HSSP Alliance? Now the THEO's been absorbed.
That's an always the question. I wonder how is that linked to live sports stream? But
the people want to know.
People want to know. But I think currently that's a difficult question to answer in this webinar, because not really prepared for it. But I can say that nothing changes in that domain, and I think we're all doubling down on live sports, and both HSP and Millicast both have their place in live sports. And certainly if you combine it with all of the goodies that we've just been presenting, double box, an L shape, imagine all of that.
All right, we've got another question. With SGAI, does the server stitch the ads with DRM or not? So as a player, you does not need to switch CDM in a live stream when changing DRM content to non-DRM advertising?
It feels like a question fully fit for you, Leo. This is way beyond my No. So with the SGAI, it's the client that does the stitching. So the client is basically deciding what strategy it takes to put in the ad content. Can be that he uses the same video decoder or uses another one. So for example, the ads are typically unencrypted. So the player can choose things we put into THEO Player in the past already to reuse the same decoder and ensure that you don't need to switch that encrypted to a non-encrypted decoder, which typically creates for a black screen for 3 to 4 seconds sometimes. But since the player is in control, he can choose what the best approach is. So he can either use the same decoder not hitting in that scenario, or use a secondary player or a secondary decoder to create it. So with SGAI, how we build it today, whether it be the DRM content or clear content, we can create a fully seamless experience, completely frame accurate also. So I hope I'm answering the question.
We'll take one more question. It's 11 o'clock. How do you handle re-encoding the ads if they are served from a different video platform to ensure their same resolution as the balanced audio with balanced audio?
That's, I think, the domain that Google the AI is currently offering, like through the encoding profiles that we're providing when actually requesting the break. Actually, the break that is being provided is completely matching the ABR ladder of the customer. So not only resolution, frame rate, bit rate, but even up until the time scale of the actual media segments, because we've seen that and that was actually one of the triggers to start working on SGAI, because that are key things if you want to get a smooth experience on that big screen on that CTV device.
Right. Because it's 2 different video players, so it doesn't necessarily need to be exactly the same, but we're trying to make sure that we build encoding profiles so that it's as close as possible to the frame rate of the content.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Wow, I love no judges. Well, even emojis. Thank you all for hanging in with us as we just talk smack about live sports and our thoughts and how we see the space going. I'm so excited that we can work with THEO on SGAI among other products and projects, but this has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. If you have questions, feel free to hit us up, send us an email, LinkedIn us, WhatsApp us, send a pigeon with a letter to us, whatever you want. We're here. We love to talk about these things. And I at least love to build them also. So
Cool. Yeah, we'll send this video recording out to everyone who RSVP'd, so you will get this soon. So I think that's all we got, man.
that's all we got. And I think we had to hit the end event button.
So, thanks, everyone. We will be in touch, and we'll share our information so you can reach out to us and contact us if you have any more questions.
Okay, cool. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Take it easy, guys. Bye.